So the rain threat is over, but now the immediate threat for so many areas are these swollen watersheds, basically swollen waterways, your rivers, your creeks, your bayous. Of great concern is the San Jacinto River. And on the phone with us right now is Bret Raley, the flood control expert with the San Jacinto River Authority. Thank you so much for joining us, Bret. Let's start first with your greatest areas of concern along the San Jacinto River.
Well, just to set the story straight, we're not with flood. I don't do flood control. I actually do operations on Lake Conroe with regard to dam gate operations and reservoir operations. But I am in contact with Jeff Linder at the Harris County Flood Control and those folks at the U.S. Geological Survey and others. So I am staying abreast of what's happening with the rivers in terms of their levels and stuff. But I'm not by any chance an expert in that area.
Okay, no problem. Well, my apologies there to you. We've been
okay.
talking to so many people, and our producer's working so hard.
You bet.
But what's interesting is you talked about, about Lake Conroe, and the reason why the San Jacinto River is having issues is because of the water that has flowed downstream from Lake Conroe. Tell us what you know about the situation up there in that area and how it's impacting things.
Well, if I could address just your comment just now, the releases coming out of Lake Conroe are certainly one of many contributors to what's in the West Fork of the San Jacinto River. So as you come downstream from Lake Conroe, you've got major tributaries like Lake Creek, Spring Creek, and Cypress Creek, and other smaller tributaries, but those are the big players. So yes, the releases from Lake Conroe are contributing to the flows in the West Fork, but they're just one. They're actually a minor component when you look at the total sum of all the flows. Spring and Cypress and Lake Creek were very big players in this event as well.
Right.
And so
we've
what
seen
happens
those
is all those
spilling over into the freeways.
All of those watersheds lead into the West Fork, and they don't have control structures on them at all. So all the water that runs out of those watersheds just goes uncontrolled into the West Fork, whereas the water that comes down through the Lake Conroe watershed is at least buffered a little bit by our operations. At the peak of this event, we had inflows roughly of the rate of 130,000 cubic feet per second coming into the reservoir, and our highest rate of discharge coming out of the reservoir was roughly 79,000 cubic feet per second. So that difference is what we were allowed to buffer. So had the dam not been here, it would have been much higher volumes in the river.
So what do you expect for the communities along the San Jac, given how much water is out there and flowing?
Oh, definitely. When you see, I'm sure you guys have been reporting from Humble and Kingwood and other communities all along, and certainly
yes,
the West Fork saw record highs. And so undoubtedly there's flooding along the West Fork, as I say, as a result of all of these contributions to it. But fortunately, I think things will begin to recede soon. I haven't looked at the hydrograph below Lake Conroe in a while. I have them pulled up on my computer right now, but it looks like the West Fork, as far as the predicted hydrograph at the West Fork at I-45, for example, in Conroe, it's already crested according to the National Weather Service. As you go down further at Porter, it appears to be right at crest level. So as you go further south, of course, it'll be longer before they crest. But I guess the long story, the longer the short is that the further south you are, the longer it's going to be until you see the crest and then eventually the receding water. So it's just a matter of time. That water's got to work its way through the system. And Lake Houston, to some degree, is creating a bottleneck in it. And if you've listened to Jeff Linder from Harris County Flood Control recently, he talked about it creating a little bit of a backwater effect in the river upstream from Lake Houston. And it's just the way it is. That water just doesn't have any place to go. And so, it's going to be a little bit longer down in the southern part of the watershed before you start seeing improvement down there.
Yeah, I know it's hard to put a timetable on all of this, and I know you said people who yet haven't seen the greatest amount of water further downstream, it's going to be time. Yeah. Are we talking about days? Are we potentially talking into next week? What are we looking at?
I don't want to speak out of turn because I'm kind of out of my expertise here, but I can tell you, in general terms, we use a very rough transit time from Lake Conroe Dam to Lake Houston of about 25 hours. And so any reductions that we make or any openings that we make in very, very rough terms, it takes about that long for the water to make, to see the effect. Now, the full effect takes much longer, but like if we make a change, they'll start seeing that effect somewhere in the vicinity of 25 hours after we make that change. And we began cutting back significantly all during the night. So I would hope that, late, into the early morning hours of tomorrow morning, and again, I could look at the hydrographs, or you can look at the hydrographs from the National Weather Service and get a better idea for the timing of it. But I'm sure hoping that the next 24 hours in some of these areas, at least north and kind of west of Lake Houston, you'll start to see improvements. But again, I'm a little bit out of my range. I don't want to speak out of turn there.
I gotcha. Bret Raley, San Jacinto River Authority, thanks for the insight. That kind of dovetails along with what we've been talking about with the Brazos River rising.